This is Dabu7. Got to give a shout out to Paul Beckwith from the University of Ottawa. He is a paleoclimatologist, and he has pointed out something that's caught his attention, and it's caught mine. Since it's caught his, he has a lot of time in this field, has a lot of knowledge, and when he says, I'm seeing something here that just doesn't look right, I figure it's worth passing along and having others take a look at it. Maybe somebody else out there could add to this. I know that throughout the past few years that things have been changing. So if you've just started looking at the wind patterns and everything the past few years, you really got to go back looking decades at the data to see where the big changes are coming in. Now, what he's pointing out is that there's two main jet streams on the planet. You got this huge one on the southern hemisphere that spins around Antarctica, and these two systems right here that are churning. And I've talked about the geometric pattern of the wind, not only here at this pole, but on Saturn and other planets as well. But in the northern hemisphere, the biggest charge of energy comes from right here off the coast of Japan, down, up, and over and into the United States. Our main jet stream, so to speak. There's a lot of streams here connected, but the main jet that comes through here does so right there. Now, what he has noticed and pointed out, and he says that from his knowledge, this doesn't seem right, and it shows where we sit right now with the chaos in the atmosphere. Now, I know we got to take in the hand the weather warfare, their technology, and how much they're messing with it too, which we have no data or no proof or any of that, but we just know what's going on. When you look at this map, he says that it's connecting now for the first times from the northern hemisphere into the southern hemisphere. Now, for somebody just looking at this, it may not seem like that big of a deal. But he says for the longest time, and it makes sense here, the equator is the hottest area. It's where all the heat rises. It creates a dome, creating this barrier between the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, where it was very rare to see the winds cross that. The streams would stay in their hemispheres. Every now and then they may have fluctuated, but now he's seeing them crossing the hemispheres in mass. And this was one of the spots he pointed out right here. And you can see, instead of it spinning up, it is actually climbing and making it over this. And what seems to be driving this and pulling all this, and you can see all the energy, even down here, you have the big jet stream that's supposed to be going all the way around Antarctica, but it's being pulled off here by this spot. Okay, this area. It's pulling all of this in and controlling a lot, this one area, and pulling that air over that ridge. So it's actually crossed the equator. So he says that it's something that shouldn't be happening. He also points out it's being seen in a couple other spots now since it began. Normally, it would run up and get close to it or near it and then come back. But here, you can see the same thing. We have all this being pulled right down and through here over the Atlantic. And what's interesting up here is the fronts you have and the quake activity that we've seen up here as well. And this big ridge of pressure coming right down where we're seeing that swarm of quakes that has gone quiet since. Iceland, expecting volcanic activity. If they do erupt, you can see here from the wind pattern just exactly where that ash plume is going to go. It's going to spin around, then get kicked out some over here. It could go up in here, spin around, drop back down through here. I mean, it could go several different ways depending on the eruption and the size of the plume, but it's something to keep on the radar because they are expecting something out of that area. But I thought it was worth noting. And to me, with all the rhetoric of climate change and this and that, it's all a control mechanism for them. We look at the patterns of the planet, and to me, and I'm going to be dropping a video after this one showing proof of what I'm saying here, showing the data that overlays, showing that what we're actually heading toward here is a cooling trend, what some would call a mini ice age. And if you look back through history, you look at the data, and I'm going to put out another video showing the proof in the data on where this is all pointing. And it shows proof that as the Earth tries to rebound, it goes through these cycles. This is what they're not telling you. And it goes through warming periods, and then it hits small little mini ice ages, and then can go through warming trends again. And the ice captures all of that. And when you go back and look at the data, and you look at the carbon, and you look at everything else that was captured in it, and look at the levels of where we sit now, it's very interesting. And the fact that we know they are manipulating the weather. For those that don't know, it's well proven by now, the cloud seeding. Here in the past few months, they just did it in California. They came out in the public and admitted it. They said it. They've been manipulating the weather for a long time. And when you see these historic droughts hit places, you have to wonder, why are they not trying to do something to help there? When you see historic flooding, like you just seen here in the United States, out of nowhere, that doesn't make sense. You only see it once in 1,000 years. And then it's happening in multiple places. You start to wonder, if we know there's individuals out there that have the technology to do things, why are we not seeing and hearing in the news the strides they're taking to fix things? They don't even want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about the technology. They don't want to talk about any of it whatsoever. Why? Because there's something nefarious there. That's why. It's the greatest weapon you could ever control. You could cripple countries without ever declaring war or firing a shot. And they would have to go a long way in trying to prove that the other country has a weapon of such magnitude and that they've used it. And we've talked about it before, even with the earthquakes. We've talked about all this stuff. And it's very real. You'd be naive to think that they don't have the technologies when for years now we've been talking about facilities like HARP, their mobile stations. It goes on and on. So we know they're manipulating the weather. We know they're not showing us that they're doing anything positive in doing so. So to me, everything that comes about is being controlled big time or manipulated. And I think they're manipulating the jet streams, the energies. They're spinning up their own little patterns, moving the lows and the high pressures around in the atmosphere simply by inducing heat. They can blast with HARP heat into the upper ionosphere. Blast it. You do that in mass, large scale, in one place, concentrated, it's going to build heat. It's going to change the game there in the atmosphere, period. That's the basics of all this, okay? So knowing that they're 20, 30 years ahead of us in the technology that we even know about out here, they could be doing a lot more to be helping things, building pipelines for water instead of pipelines for oil for people. We live in a water world, for crying out loud. But it's all about control and manipulation, right? Interesting information here in regards to the patterns. Anyone else out there has any background on this, anything to add to this, it'd be appreciated. You know, we're in this together. We learn from one another. Some could come along and say, oh, well, this is calm, and this and that. Others going to say, probably, no, it's not. Others probably going to sit on the fence and wait and see more. But this is where it sits. Nonetheless, once again, I got to give a shout out to Paul Beckwith. There's information here, somebody with this background that sees something like this and it concerns them. It kind of concerns me. So I figured putting out the video is the best way to get to the bottom of it, raise awareness to it, and shout outs to everyone out there that is fighting the good fight worldwide. This has been Dabu 7. Much love, y'all.